So now that we can recognize exclusionary behaviors, let's talk about what to do if they happen. In this lesson, we will discuss both why it is difficult to intervene, and we'll walk through 5 intervention techniques that you can use as a bystander. The first step to talking about bystander intervention is to start talking about why it's hard to intervene. What are some of the reasons you have not intervened when you've seen something happening in the past? There are multiple levels of barriers to intervention, including personal barriers, peer pressure, and societal barriers. Psychologists have been studying this for decades and have found several common themes, which are summarized on this screen. I'd like to talk specifically about 2 of these. First, let's address diffusion of responsibility. This is also known as the bystander effect. Psychologists discovered that individuals are less likely to intervene when more people are present, because there's an assumption that someone else will act, so we don't have to. A second important topic in this module is systems of oppression. Systems of oppression are directly connected to our identities, and they describe how individuals experience different degrees of privilege and marginalization, as well as how likely we are to recognize risk and step in when it's happening to someone we perceive to be different from us. Our society socializes us to prioritize people from some groups over others. Power hierarchies are important here because they can play a major role in preventing bystanders from intervening. For example, one fear could be that they may lose their job or be kicked out of a group because they speak up. Another example is retaliation. Actively intervening in a situation may possibly put the bystander in danger as well. So how do we intervene? You must first assess the situation when an incident happens. The following prompts are provided as a quick mental checklist to help individuals determine what's happening and what's the safest way for them to intervene. This checklist is important because retaliation is a serious problem. Running through this in your mind beforehand can help prevent retaliation from occurring. Regarding safety, a common misconception we all hold is that the only way to intervene effectively is to place ourselves into possible danger. For example, stepping in between 2 people who are about to fight. That is a very unsafe way to intervene. The safest way anyone can intervene in any situation is from a distance and alongside others. We realize that in some situations, that won't be an option, but if it is, you should use it. Finally, the last prompt shown here is particularly important. Research shows that when bystanders do not intervene and help the target, it can be just as traumatic or even more traumatic for the target than the offending behavior itself. This is why we say that there is no such thing as a neutral bystander. There are many ways an individual can intervene when a situation is occurring. We are going to teach you the 5 Ds, which were developed by Green Dot. The first D is direct. You can directly intervene with the harasser in the moment or afterwards. You can intervene directly by confronting the situation, by saying or doing something. You have to consider where you are in the power hierarchy and potentially adjust accordingly if intervening puts you at risk. But this can otherwise be a very effective strategy. Sometimes all it takes is a, "What did you say? Can you repeat that?" And the person will realize their mistake. You can also question the intent. "I'm not sure you meant that." You can use ouch and educate. "Ouch, I find that offensive because." You can counter the offense. "Actually, women are equally capable of this work." Or establish expectations. "No, that was inappropriate. We don't do that here." This is important when developing a code of conduct, as we briefly discussed in the previous module. Let's listen to an example here from one of our colleagues who utilized a direct intervention while in the field.
During a recent fieldwork trip in northern New Hampshire that involved a very long day of snowmobiling in pretty hard conditions, I was empowered to speak up and voice my concerns about continuing to snowmobile farther into the woods, away from our cars as the day was growing long, because I wanted to make sure that we had enough time to return to our cars before it got dark. And our data collection goals were sort of no longer sort of worth it. We were doing remote sensing, image collection that really required certain sun angles that were kind of past, given the time of day. And so I voiced these concerns about thinking that we should probably turn back because we had a long trip back to the cars. And my fellow team members they came up to me after I voiced this and with appreciation that I had spoken up. And it ultimately led us to decide to turn around and begin traveling back instead of pushing ahead and leading to a much longer field day.
You can also intervene directly with a physical action, such as placing yourself between the target and the perpetrator. Direct intervention, while effective, can also be a riskier tactic. If a situation involves risk of physical violence, then this intervention is most likely not the safest way to intervene. Direct intervention also tends to lend itself to individuals who have more power in a situation. So, for example, a field expedition leader may say that they would just directly intervene if a senior field scientist or crew member is being inappropriate. However, a student or early career researcher may not feel safe enough doing so. The second D of intervention, distract, is often a safer way to intervene in a situation. For example, you could create a distraction by talking to the offender, asking for the time or assistance with preparing, deploying, or moving a field instrument. You could distract by talking to the target, asking them to help prepare for a deployment, or pretending you know them and redirecting them away from the situation. Or distract by making your own scene to deflect attention away from the person being targeted. Drop a tool on the ground in front of the situation, spill water, or make a loud noise like slam a door nearby. Humor is another example of a possible distraction to employ. While humor can most certainly be used to break tension, it's very important that the inappropriate behavior still be called out right afterwards, so it doesn't become just a joke. If you do not feel safe intervening, you can delegate by seeking help from a third party. This can be a trusted advisor, mentor, a more senior student, field expedition leader, department chair, dean, ombudsperson. Delegate means that you ask someone else to handle the situation, or it could mean asking someone else to join you in a direct or distract strategy as well. Many professional societies today are training staff on how to deal with incidents when they occur at conferences. For example, at the American Geophysical Union and the Geological Society of America meetings, staff wear brightly colored pins indicating they can help. You should also consider having a designated field team member serve as an assigned delegate and make sure they are listed as references in the emergency plan as discussed in the first module. This delegate should have experience with bystander intervention training, such as the one facilitated by Advanced Geo. Regardless of whom you delegate to, make sure to follow up with the target and the person you delegate to and ensure that appropriate actions are taken. Here's a great example of a colleague who was delegated to when a situation occurred and how they responded.
I've observed and been part of a couple of incidents where there was sort of interpersonal conflict in the field, and that was resolved through the leader of the project asking me in one case to hold a discussion with the field team about what had happened so that we could sort of talk it through and move on. And that was really powerful, actually. We got together one day after a field day and had a conversation, and people explained what had upset them, and other people explained why they had reacted in a certain way and apologized for that. And we were able to move forward as a team.
Our fourth D is document. Documenting a situation can provide a valuable piece of evidence for the person who's being targeted. This includes recording a scene, collecting screenshots of texts or emails. This can even be as simple as sending yourself an email with details of the incident so you have a date and timestamp. If you don't have a phone or internet in the field, writing a note in your field book with exactly what you heard in a situation, who said it, and who was there. Use this information later to file a report when you get back to the site or home base. Now, it is incredibly important to stress that any documentation a bystander collects must be given to the person being targeted. Bystanders should not share videos, audio recordings, or something similar unless they have the permission of the person who had been or is being targeted. Regardless of what else you do, it's key that you always employ the 5th D of intervention. That is to double back and check in with the person being targeted by the behavior to make sure they're okay. You can validate that what they experienced wasn't okay. Ask if you can help them access resources or if they want to report the behavior. Refer them to the communication and emergency plan developed by the team that contains information about the reporting mechanism and steps for them to follow. These are concepts that we covered in the first module. More importantly, respect their wishes if they do not wish to do so. Sometimes an incident doesn't happen directly in front of us, or it happens so fast that we don't have an opportunity to use a D other than double back, which should happen regardless. This is really important, as a failure to support people who've been harassed can be very alienating and distressing, especially in field situations where team members don't have their typical support network and are stuck with their perpetrator. Even a simple acknowledgement that the incident occurred and asking them, "Are you okay?" can go a long way to helping the person feel seen. In this lesson, we have learned how we as individuals can take action to address exclusionary behaviors. Regardless of which D you use, the most important thing is that you do something to help keep your colleagues safe. The 5 Ds are only powerful if used in real time, and that takes practice. Join us for an advancing field safety debrief session to gain practice using the 5 Ds for real-world scenarios with a trained facilitator. You can sign up for a session at the link on the screen. For more information about bystander intervention, please visit the Advanced Geo website and the accompanying toolkit, resources, and readings for this module.